I was riding home on my Harley at 60 miles per hour late in the afternoon, when an old model lowrider Buick ran a stop sign about 50 feet in front of me. I barely had time to touch my brakes when I hit him full on broad side of the driver's door. The last thing I remember was my body hitting the car, before both my bike and I went flying over it before hitting the highway. As told to me by family, I was life-flighted to the hospital, where I underwent 8 hours of bodily and brain surgery and spent the next 4 days in ICU, followed by a total of 7 days in a coma with friends and family by my side in the hospital room. I knew none of this, as the next thing I realized after hitting the car I was floating in outer space with the Earth below. To the best of my guess I was in orbit around 400 to 600 miles above the Earth. But one thing I was not aware of at the time, but thought about years later, was that were no stars. The Earth was there, though not particularly noticeable, but what was noticeable was the complete and utter darkness. Not just a darkness of not being able to see what was there, but also a darkness from the lack of anything being there, a complete void of emptiness. I remember floating along in orbit for a while until I noticed something coming toward me. As it got closer, I saw that it was a door, much like the door that is floating in the title sequence of the old Twilight Zone TV series. When it came to me, I knocked on the door. As it opened, this unbelievably bright and pure white light came pouring out into the darkness from inside. I wanted to go inside so bad I could taste it. I wanted to go in there more than I have ever wanted anything in my life. I remember this feeling of finally going home for the first time in my life. But then as I began to cross the threshold and enter, I heard this very loud, though not shouting, deep voice say, "No." At that moment I began falling. Looking back, I saw the door closing and felt the most profound feeling of rejection and hurt that I have never experienced before or since. I looked down and saw myself falling towards Earth. The next thing I remember was hearing a ringing in my ear. I opened my eyes to see what I would realize later to be an empty hospital room. And the ringing was coming from a phone beside my bed. I went to reach for the phone and realized that I could not because both my arms were in casts. As it kept ringing, I was able to get one arm out of a sling and answer the phone. It was the manager at the ISP that I ran. He was telling me that Adrian, the brightest young man that I knew and first employee I hired at the company, had just died in a car wreck. After I hung up the phone, I thought about how this was his last summer working for me before he went to the naval school, where he had been one of the few young men each year to be accepted. Over the next 2 years, all the excruciating pain, both mental and physical, that I experienced was nothing compared to the emotional pain I felt over Adrian being chosen over me to die. It took me those 2 years and more to come to the realization and understanding that Adrian was chosen because in some way God loved him even more than he loved me. He had brought him home, while I had to wait to go to that wonderful place, with the warm white light waiting to cradle my soul. That was my first realization. The second was that God was through with me. I came to realize that in some fundamental way, we are all in God's hands, and it is our duty and responsibility to do His work, and in some little way make this world a better place for others and our children to live in. I get up every morning with a little prayer that I can do in this day what God would have me do. Most of the time, if not all, I fail, but thanks to others in my life, especially my wife and children, sometimes I succeed.